The Pittsburgh Steelers continue to wait for Aaron Rodgers, but Kirk Cousins could be a great plan B. We'll discuss on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by my co-host, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some James Cook trade talk and some other vets who are skipping OTAs. We're also going to talk about some rookies who are having issues at OTAs, like Shemar Stewart and maybe even Travis Hunter. But we're going to start with this plan B for the Pittsburgh Steelers if Aaron Rodgers does retire, and it could be Kirk Cousins. Before we get into it, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. But we're hearing now that Kirk Cousins could be a potential plan B for the Pittsburgh Steelers if they do not end up with Aaron Rodgers. And my guy Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers talked about it.
Jeremy Fowler, one of our colleagues, worked at ESPN. He put on a report there that said that the Steelers have a plan B interest in making a Kirk Cousins trade happen. Now, of course, Kirk Cousins, guy who's played a long time in the league now. He's now with the Falcons on a pretty big deal. Michael Penix came up and kind of took his spot last year, looked better. And there's wonderings if the Steelers could make a play for Kirk Cousins after he played last year. Last year, in fact, they faced off against Kirk Cousins. They beat him. He finished the year 7-7 on 14 starts through 18 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. That led the NFL in interceptions. Alan, I get that the idea that the Steelers might want him, but here's the thing. I'm not all that certain that they are trying to trade for Kirk Cousins because he comes with a hefty price tag, and so the Falcons would have to eat a lot of that price to get him, and I'm just not sure he's worth it. I'm also just not sure, even without the price tag, if he's worth it. He wasn't playing very good last year, especially late in the season. He looked like his arm was falling off. He looked like age had really caught up to him in ways that weren't going to be beneficial. I don't know if I'm all in on this one.
I am also not all in on this one. Look, I have been someone who said that Aaron Rodgers makes sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers if their goal is to maximize winning. You can see how Aaron Rodgers in the passenger seat rather than being in the driver's seat like he's been for most of his career, and a good organization. Like, I feel like the Steelers could support Aaron Rodgers as well as about any other team that would realistically have a quarterback opening this offseason, so I get that. But I don't feel the same about Kirk Cousins, and maybe I'm just wrong about their evaluation, but watching Kirk Cousins play last year at the end of the year when he got benched for Michael Penix, and then watching Aaron Rodgers finish the year, which I thought he played his best football at the end of the season, I think that Aaron Rodgers is a significantly better player than Kirk Cousins right now, even at their different ages. And if I'm the Steelers, I would still accept Aaron Rodgers, and I think it needs to happen like ASAP before mandatory minicamp. But I would not, if Aaron Rodgers retires, I would just go with what I got, or maybe make a smaller trade for a Will Levis or Jameis Winston or, something like that. I would not go get Kirk Cousins as a plan B if I'm the Steelers if I miss out on Rodgers.
No, Kirk Cousins it should not be an option for them. We saw now that Kevin O'Connell is just a mastermind, right? He completely changed Sam Darnold, who's the worst quarterback in the league. I've been his biggest hater forever. And I don't think Sam Darnold is actually good right now. Like, I think he's going to be terrible again with the Seahawks. Yeah. Kevin O'Connell's offense is fantastic. And we saw Kirk Cousins thrive in that offense. And I'm not trying to eliminate Kirk Cousins' career. He's had a really solid career. He has. But solid. He's about to turn 37 years old in August. He's coming off that Achilles, which he just does seem to be completely hampered by. He was already not mobile to begin with. And Atlanta had a pretty good offensive line, right? You're going to put him behind a worse offensive line with worse weapons. He had Drake London there, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, if we can count him, Bijan Robinson to help him in the running game. And now you're going to move him to the Steelers, where all he's going to have is DK Metcalf and I guess, Pat Freiermuth, but it's just, it's not going to work out there. It'd be so silly to trade any assets for him. I also don't want Aaron Rodgers whatsoever, but Kirk Cousins wouldn't help this team just tank with Will Howard or Mason Rudolph if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that there's a time on this. I talked about it recently. I think that there is a line in the sand of where you're going to not be able to maximize the Aaron Rodgers potential, even if you bring him in. Like, he needs to get the playbook now. He needs to work with his teammates. He needs to begin building chemistry. And we heard a clip from Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers earlier in the week where he's like, you don't want your potential future Steelers teammates to be answering all these questions about you not being at OTAs and all this stuff. And it's funny the way we talk about it, like Rodgers is already on the Steelers. I don't know that it's, as confirmed as maybe people have acted. It's taken so long though. But I think if the Steelers want to do the Aaron Rodgers experience, they're doing themselves a massive disservice to let him not sign before mandatory minicamp and say, hey, we'll just see you when training camp shows up. Then you're already behind other teams, especially with really good teams and really good quarterbacks in your division. Like, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't get in there before mandatory minicamp in the middle of June and have some contact and some chemistry with his teammates and start to lay the foundation here, I don't think that you're going to be able to maximize the Aaron Rodgers situation, even if I see more potential in it than other people. Like, you're not going to be able to get them. You're going to get 70% of what you could have got if you don't get him in before training camp.
Yeah, I mean, and we've already seen it now. Last year he did have good weapons, right? He had Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams and still struggled. I don't think Aaron Rodgers would be good with the Steelers either. Like, I don't want that. I don't really think the Steelers have a good option at quarterback this year. So that's why, as a fan of them, I would like them just to tank for the year and finally, have an earlier draft pick to go get a franchise quarterback next draft. But if they do go with Aaron Rodgers, it took him so long just to build that connection with Garrett Wilson, right? And he had 2 off seasons long with him. It took until middle of last year to start to really connect with him. And he was getting frustrated with him. Garrett Wilson was frustrated with him. Imagine him with DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf cannot get nearly as open as Garrett Wilson can. He's not going to be as easy for quarterbacks, to hit him in stride and to get those yards. And I also feel like DK Metcalf can have a bit of an attitude too if he wants one. So I don't think this pairing is good either, but it's better, I guess, than trading for Kirk Cousins.
Yes, to not give up draft capital of any kind. It's, conditional 7th. I mean, just giving up nothing, that's ultimately going to be better. But I agree with you. I think that it's also, trading George Pickens, I understand from the Steelers' perspective. But if you wanted to maximize Aaron Rodgers, that kind of goes the opposite way too. Who's their wide receiver? No, Robert Woods, Calvin Austin. Like, what are we doing here? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But either way, no Kirk Cousins at Atlanta Falcons OTAs, though. So clearly he does not want to be in Atlanta, but I guess that's been pretty known all along. Speaking of missing OTAs, a first-round pick in the NFL draft is missing OTAs because of a contract dispute. And wouldn't you know it, it's with the Cincinnati Bengals. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Look, we're probably going to get an NBA Finals here of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. What an absolute snoozer of a finals matchup. But one way to make it more exciting? Looking at maybe some Tyrese Halliburton assist player props, maybe some Shai Gilgeous-Alexander points player props. Let's make it exciting here, folks. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's even better. It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com right now and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Michelle, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Kirk Cousins as a plan B for the Steelers. I don't think either of us are very excited about that possibility. It's either Aaron Rodgers or tank for the Steelers at this point. Quite frankly, I think we both agree that tanking is probably the best way to go for the franchise, but regardless, conversation brought up because Kirk Cousins is missing NFL OTAs, and with OTAs taking place all across the NFL right now, it's our closest taste to football before we get to training camp. So I love the OTAs, even if, it's not the most important part of the NFL calendar. But you know who it is really, really important for, Michelle? Rookies. Rookies really need OTAs just to get in the swing of how the NFL works. And if you're looking at first-round rookies, can you think of a rookie outside of maybe Cam Ward, Jackson Dart? Can you think of a rookie who needed a quicker start more than Shemar Stewart from the Cincinnati Bengals? Number one, major project player, a guy who did not have a lot of college production, but has elite physical traits, had an elite combine performance, elite measurements, all of that, more than any other edge player in the first round. I would say Shemar Stewart needed a running start with things because his development is probably the longest projection. Not only that, but add in the Bengals situation, where they are a win now, championship or bust style team who didn't make the playoffs last year. They used their first round pick where they have to be great in the draft now because of those contracts. They used that first round pick on Shemar Stewart, and they need him to produce right away, and they need that development to hit the turbo button. And now he's not in OTAs. I can't think of a worse situation. And look, a ton of other rookies may not have their contract figured out right now, but they're on the field. So I can't think of a worse possible contract dispute to cause an OTA holdout than Shemar Stewart and the Bengals.
I mean, yeah, already the pick seemed like maybe it was a bit of a reach, like you said, because he's raw, right? And he there's a lot of learning to go. He's still very young, though. He's still only 21, but that's why he really needs to be there. Not only that, but Trey Hendrickson, is not participating either because he's holdout and he's like their only good defender, right? They desperately need pass rushers. They desperately need help on defense because, as you mentioned, this team, as long as they have Joe Burrow, especially with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins there, they are Super Bowl contenders, but they need their defense to at least be average, to be true Super Bowl contenders. And without hitting on some of these draft picks, they're not going to get there. And this doesn't mean that just because he has to miss the first, few days of OTAs, maybe everything works out and he's there and he can develop. But rookies can get behind very, very, very quickly. And they don't, from everything I've read and heard about from coaches, they don't go back and reteach you things that you're missing out on. You just need to catch up. So he's already going to be behind. And yeah, like you said, he already wasn't polished. So this is not a great scenario for the Bengals or Stewart for his rookie season.
Yeah, no way around it. It's a bad situation, even if it eventually works out. Like you said, you can't make up this lost time. And when you're a longtime veteran in the NFL, you're Trey Hendrickson. So what? You don't need to make up any lost time. You know everything there is to know. But when you're Shemar Stewart, you do. So what is going on with Shemar Stewart? Why is he not out on the field? I'll throw it to our guys from Locked On Bengals to break that down.
Bengals and Stewart are haggling over language regarding the potential voiding of his future guarantees. Per a source with knowledge of the situation, the Bengals want to include a phrase that causes a default in the current year to trigger a default in all remaining years. The problem is that the contract signed by last year's first-round pick, Amarius Mims, does not include the language that the Bengals are now attempting to insert into Stewart's deal. Mims obviously was the 18th pick, Stewart 17th pick this year. The key phrase, we're told, also doesn't appear in contracts signed earlier this year by Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And there we go. Something that you've mentioned on the pod, Jake, is that this is one of the possibilities. And what's interesting about it, and Florio added this, is some teams have done this, but there's more upfront money to it. And that the rookies that have agreed to it have gotten the upfront money that they were desiring to do that. And it's a give and take. And I do think that that's an interesting point. But really, regardless, I keep coming back to it. Now we know the why. We have a good idea about the why it's not signed. But it's May 25th, and not every rookie is going to be signed by May 25th. But when it's keeping him off the field, that's when it hurts. And it hurts Shemar, and it hurts the Bengals, and it hurts everyone involved. And it's why, by the way, this is a topic. This isn't really a topic for us if he's practicing, because it's May 25th, and he doesn't need to be signed. He does not have to sign his rookie deal. But since he's not practicing, whether that's on Shemar's camp, or the Bengals, or everybody involved, that's the issue. That's why it's a topic. That's why we look, and we're a month removed now from the draft, and we're like, man, that guy was a really raw prospect. Like, a lot of evaluators felt that way about him. He needs reps. Well, he's not getting any reps.
And listen, this does put a spotlight on Myles Murphy, who was a first-round pick for the Bengals at defensive end out of Clemson a couple of years ago, is basically not turned out for them. And it's like, if you had a guy earlier who needed less development and he didn't turn out yet, like, I expect you to develop this guy more, and now he's missing time. So, like we talked about, it's just, and the thing is the black cloud over the Bengals just won't go away. They signed T. Higgins, they signed Jamar Chase, the big problem last year, and now it's like, even though they did those things, they have the same exact problem in their locker room, and you wonder if maybe Shemar Stewart's agent is less likely to acquiesce or work with the Bengals because he knows they've stiffed other players. They're stiffing Trey Hendrickson. You know, it's going to have a domino effect for the Bengals going forward in their perception to players and agents.
It does just seem like, though, their ownership and management, it's always in, someone's always discussing them, right?
Yep.
Either for being cheap or just not paying people what they deserve, or letting players go that they shouldn't be letting go. So they're not beating these allegations right now without being able to sign their first round pick. It's supposed to be very, very easy. I mean, it's all laid out for you, what you're supposed to pay these guys. Yeah. So yeah, who knows? I don't know who's right on this side, right? Should these words be in this contract or not? Is this normal? I have no idea, but it seems like, I don't think his agent would be pushing this if it was something that other teams were doing as well.
Well, the language can be in there, but that means you got to give me more money up front. It's a give and take, and if Armarius Mims didn't have it in his contract last year and he went pick 18 and I went 17, then I'm not accepting it either. Like, the Bengals just seem like they're always trying to pull something over on people, and it just gives them such a poor reputation. But either way, I do want to move to one other smaller OTA story about a rookie. Just measure here, all right? So Travis Hunter, there have been some videos from Travis Hunter running routes at Jacksonville Jaguars OTAs and things like that. And look, you could be honest, they are a little clunky. He's having a problem decelerating on a curl, a little stumble on out routes, this and that. Look, we're not getting every rep and everything like that, but they are transitioning Travis Hunter to be a full-time wide receiver. He's never been a full-time wide receiver only guy before. He's very unrefined, and we knew that. Do we think that these early unpolishments, that's not even a word, but I think we know what I'm saying here. We're picking up what I'm laying down. Do you think these things are cause for concern in terms of what Travis Hunter can do right away out of the gate for the Jags?
See, listen, anything with OTAs, anything before they put on their pads, I do not care about. I think it's so silly because it almost never comes to fruition, right? Like, I think about, this is the easiest thing to think about. Just remember Justin Jefferson's rookie season, off season. I mean, he couldn't beat out, I don't remember who it was, right? But it was like, he's a backup. He came and beat out these lower guys. He's playing terrible. Like, he's just not performing like we thought he would. And then a rookie season, breaks the record that year with 1,400 receiving yards. Like, and then Braylon Edwards for the Raiders, he was getting hyped up like no other about how good he looked as a rookie, and everyone just thought they got such a steal, right? And completely did absolutely nothing throughout his career, but also his rookie season. So I really don't think right now, whatever they're doing in their shorts and their t-shirts and the couple little clips we get matter whatsoever, and it teaches us nothing, unfortunately.
Well, I think it reminds me of even in training camp. Remember when Jamar Chase couldn't catch?
Yep.
And he was a bust, number 5.
And then they were making fun of him because the lines. He was like, well, the lines are different. And everyone was freaking out. Again, he puts up 1,400 yards as a rookie. Like, it's almost like if you have worse reports coming out about you, the better you end up being. And then the opposite way. When you have glowing reports, it's like you end up being disappointing.
Yep. Funny how that all works out. But anyways, going off the field now, we're not going to talk about people playing at OTAs because there are some guys around the NFL who are skipping OTAs, and it's interesting to see the names on the list. All right, Michelle, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We've talked about Kirk Cousins being plan B for the Steelers, rookie issues at OTAs. Now I want to talk about some guys who are skipping OTAs and looking for a new contract and whether or not they should get them. Before we dive into it, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So, like I said, there are a lot of guys in the NFL who skip OTAs. OTAs are voluntary, so, it's not like people can get in trouble for this or anything, but it's a way for guys to kind of show their displeasure at times with their contract situation. And one of the guys who we know that is doing that is James Cook, running back from the Buffalo Bills, and my guy Joe Marino from Locked On Bills kind of talked about why maybe the Bills wouldn't pay this money.
Why wouldn't you do it? Well, the contract demands and being on the same page for valuation of the deal. That would be a big reason, but also replaceability. Running back production in the NFL is not hard to find. Does it make sense with an expensive roster to commit 4.5%, 5% of your cap to a running back? It's a fair question to ask. And surely James Cook and whatever running back benefits from Josh Allen being the quarterback and the run blocking and scheme that exists in front of him. And so if the Bills were to move on from James Cook, for me, it wouldn't be about going out and finding another guy that can touch the ball 250 times. I don't know if you need that. I think you can absorb a lot of the touches to Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. I think what you'd be looking for is who can restore the explosive elements, right? The big play ability that James Cook gives you. Because I think the Bills' offense benefits from this approach that they've had of a 50% James Cook, 25% Ray Davis, 25% Ty Johnson workload. I think, and the backs benefit from that as well. And you saw James Cook being able to be fresh and down the stretch for the Bills that this past year, where against Denver he was awesome in the playoffs, against Kansas City he was awesome in the playoffs, and you want that.
If I'm the Bills and he wants $15 million a year, I'm sorry, I simply can't do that. Joe kind of talked about that in the video as well, that he wants 15 and realistically, like his valuation probably around 12 million in between, like around James Conner type area. I just make him play it out. He's not going to hold out. You can't hold out in the NFL nowadays. I would trade him if you could, but I don't think you're going to get a very good deal for James Cook because other teams don't want to pay $15 million per year to James Cook either. So I would just make him play it out and then leave. And then when he gets a decent deal, you get yourself a compensatory pick. So that's how I would play it if I'm Buffalo.
I think you're absolutely crazy. And you know what? My wife also agrees with you, and I think she's absolutely crazy. We've actually had a fight about this yesterday. Pay the guy $15 million a year. Why are we acting like that's some crazy amount of money? It'd put him at running back 3 costs per year. I think he's a top 5, 6 running back in this league, especially considering age. And when you are at that level at your position, you typically get paid at the tippy top when it's your turn to get paid. And he's not even asking close to that. Saquon Barkley's at 20.6. Christian McCaffrey's at 19 million per year. He's asking to make a little bit more than Jonathan Taylor. And I think that's perfectly fine with his ability as both a rusher to break off long runs and be consistent, averaging 4.9 yards per carry last year as well, scoring a ton of touchdowns too, even with Josh Allen stealing a ton, but then also his receiving ability and what he offers in that capacity, which Jonathan Taylor just doesn't simply offer. So I don't think the price is that crazy. We look at the wide receiver position. Right now, the Bills are paying Khalil Shakir $13.2 million per year. I think James Cook is more important to the offense than Khalil Shakir. Cortland Sutton right now is making $13.7 for the Broncos. Cooper Kupp at his old age is making $15 million. Jerry Jeudy, who's had half of a good season in his whole entire career, making $17.5. Christian Kirk, $18. Calvin Ridley, $23 million. And you don't want to pay a guy that's touching the ball 250 times for your offense. That was such a big part of your offensive success last year. And like he mentioned, just in that clip we were listening to, came through in the playoffs. You don't want to pay him $15 million a year. I think the running back position is being way too hated on. If the Bills were a bad team then yeah, don't pay a running back $50 million per year.
Right.
But the Bills are a Super Bowl contending team. That's when you care about having a good running back, and that's when they're not just easily replaceable.
You hit on the thing. For me, it's replaceability. And I just think that James Cook is a very good player, but I don't think he's an elite running back. I don't think he's as good as like a Saquon or a Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey, guys on that level. So I couldn't justify it. But that is a compelling case, and we'll see what the Bills ultimately decide to do. Do want to bring up some other players who are noticeably absent from their OTAs. And first we start with Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders, and it's understandable. Right now, he's the 18th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL in total value of the contract. That's behind guys like you mentioned earlier, like a Calvin Ridley, like a Jalen Waddle, like a Devontae Smith, Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman Jr. He's literally right next to Chris Godwin and Stephon Diggs when it comes to total value of the contract. Terry McLaurin is certainly a player who should be paid higher than that. I think T. Higgins, with his average salary being around $28.7 million, I think McLaurin probably deserves to be up around there, especially with what they have around him. So I think this is a guy who you do need to pay, and he rightfully is looking for more money.
Yeah, I mean, and last year, him able to prove that he could get it done with another different quarterback as a rookie. And yeah, Jaden Daniels is his best one, but also a great season from him last year. But he's led the Commanders in receptions and receiving yards in each of his 6 seasons in the NFL by more than 375 yards also in each of those seasons. Like, they have asked him to do everything, and he's had to now do it. He's had a different primary starting quarterback in each of his first 6 NFL seasons. So this will be the first time he gets to play with the same quarterback in back-to-back years. And I have a fun little note about McLaurin. So he's had 5 straight seasons with at least 1,000 receiving yards, despite playing with a different quarterback in each of those seasons. He's the first player in NFL history to have 5 straight seasons with 1,000 receiving yards at any point in a career, each coming from a different starting quarterback. So, like, I do think he's proven to be one of the top, talents at the wide receiver position. He deserves to get a new payday.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, he definitely deserves to be around. And they just made big trades for veterans because they're going all in on Jaden Daniels' rookie contract. Well, paying a guy like Terry McLaurin is something that you do when you have Jaden Daniels on his rookie contract. Kyle Pitts is also holding out. I mean,
holding out for what, man? You're 20 receptions a year.
Yeah, we're all holding out for Kyle Pitts to finally do something. Like, we've been holding out for him as well. I think this is insane. If I'm the Falcons, it's unfortunate, but trade him if you can. You might have an option to do that. I would just let him go if you have to, because he clearly hasn't lived up to where he was drafted. And I think it's kind of comical that he would hold out like he's supposed to get a deal.
Yeah, I don't know what he'd be holding out for. He should just be grateful that he's still, has a spot on that roster at this point.
Yeah, he's still getting opportunities and treated like a tight end 1 at this point. But either way, it's OTA season. Again, it's not quite training camp, but it's as close as we're going to get. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk, as we tell you every single episode. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there.
Bye, y'all.